So, here is my review for Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'm just going to get right into it. This movie had a pretty emotional start to it with the death of Peter Quill's mum. I will admit that kind of. Okay, so now that I've watched it and I've seen this movie like a dozen times, it doesn't really affect me like it did the first time, but the first time it did get me. I kind of cried. But what I will say about this movie is that it's not one of my favorites. Okay, just to clear this up, this is not one of my favorite MCU Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. And it's not really that I hate it. I don't hate this movie. I actually like it. It's just not one of my favorites because of a personal preference. My personal preference being that I prefer a more serious movie because this movie is a very light comedic movie. Okay, this doesn't take itself too seriously. It understands that, and it does it well. And what it does well is that it knows, okay, the shit that's happening in this movie is it's not grounded at all. So it kind of plays around with that and has fun and doesn't take itself too seriously. Because can you imagine a Guardians of the Galaxy movie that's dark and gritty? No, not really. So I'm glad that they went the route that they did with this movie. This formula for the formula that they used for Guardians of the Galaxy was so successful that they continue to use it in every one of their movies. That's a complaint I'll get to in future reviews. But with this movie, it works. With this one and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, it works so well. But what really draws me in is the fact that these movies, these Guardians of the Galaxy movies, are so emotional. This one I will say wasn't quite like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was a little more emotional than this one. This one was just fun to watch, and the Guardians themselves were quite interesting as characters. And this one, like the Avengers, understands that it's characters that draw an audience in, that invest you into what's going on. It's not the story, and a lot of the time it's not the villain. So it's the characters, the protagonists, our heroes that we are meant to be invested in that draw you in, right? And I liked Peter Quill. He was very witty, charming, funny. They're all pretty funny, and the ones that really like both the characters and the performances that really surprised me were, first of all, Dave Bautista as Drax. This guy was... I had never, still to this day, well, except for Spectre, but when watching this movie, I had never seen Dave Bautista in anything. I didn't even know that he was an actor besides him being a wrestler. And I'm not really into wrestling at all. So before I saw this movie, I was really worried. I didn't know. I thought this movie was going to fucking suck because Dave Bautista being in it, just like, I questioned him being in the movie, and I questioned Bradley Cooper playing, voicing a raccoon. But these two, Bradley Cooper as Rocket Raccoon and Dave Bautista as Drax, these two were the ones that surprised me. Both the performances and the characters themselves really surprised me. And like I said, Drax was interesting. He was interesting because with him, he's very serious and he doesn't get metaphors. So it's just funny seeing him interact with characters that that muck around a lot and that use metaphors a lot, like Peter Quill. So it was funny seeing him interact with some of the more humorous characters. And I will say, this is a really funny movie, but a lot of the characters like Gamora and Drax, and maybe Rocket, are kind of serious. And yet this is a very funny movie. So it's not that it's funny because they're always telling jokes, because there are a lot of jokes. But it's also funny because you're seeing serious characters interact in a very not that serious situation. Like you're seeing a serious guy like Drax react to a funny situation. That's the kind of humor that I tend to like more. But with Rocket, he was just Bradley Cooper, as I said, I wasn't really into the idea of Bradley Cooper voicing a raccoon for a movie. Now Bradley Cooper is an actor that I've known for a long time now. I knew him way before this movie even came out. I was a fan of his from The Hangover. He was just so good, and probably this is how good he was. His performance, it just being voiced, was probably one of the most memorable performances in the movie.
You know, like when you have a pet and the pet starts to look like you? What was it, anthropomorphizing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look at him now, I'm like, yeah, it's me.
Okay, so what people love about this movie is the characters and the comedy. Both the comedy comes from the characters, and this movie is all the better for it. But the one thing that everyone else hates, I hate, that it just doesn't work for this movie in general, is the villain. It's at this point in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that I start to realize Marvel's villains aren't that great, because you had the Mandarin that was going to be good but turned out to be fake, so he just kind of was forgotten. You had Malekith, like, who the hell is that guy? And then you had Alexander Pierce, which was acted by a fantastic actor, Robert Redford, but the character itself was just kind of forgettable. And here we are again with another MCU movie with another villain that just doesn't work. He's just forgettable. And this is the one thing, like characters like Malekith and the Mandarin and even Ronan the Accuser, aren't these villains meant to be really, good villains? I don't know, but I have seen TV shows like Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, like cartoons, okay? And I remember watching this episode with Ronan the Accuser, and he was actually pretty alright. And in this, he's just kind of not. He's just kind of forgettable. Anyway, besides that glaring problem that Marvel continue to have to this day, this is a fun movie. It has great action, great performances, two very awesome performances and characters, that of Drax and Rocket Raccoon, and the comedy is on point, and it never once does it feel overwhelming, like there's too much of it. But even though there is comedy, this movie understands that if you're not going to be serious, like if you're not going to try and be serious, then you at least got to have some emotional weight, and this movie has that. All of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies have that. They understand that, and that's what these Guardians of the Galaxy movies in particular, do well. And really quickly before I end the video, I want to go on to my favourite moments. It's only one, and I think you know what it is. Thanos. For the first time, we actually get to see him, like, not in a post-credit scene, but in the actual film itself. We actually get to see Thanos. Full dialogue and everything. He has full dialogue, he's talking, he is kind of pissed, and it's awesome. And I can't wait for Infinity War, man. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I'll see you in my review for Daredevil. Oh, can't wait for that. Oh, yeah. Bye.